Hi, John. How are you this week?
Hi, Elliot. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. As everybody knows, Saturday is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. You and a distinguished panel live streamed a webinar for AML Right Source on that topic earlier today. And I thought it would make sense for you and I just to spend a few minutes talking about some of our thoughts about what happened, and more importantly, what happened, what it triggered on a go forward basis.
Yeah, obviously, as we both know, we were on the phone together that morning, talking about money laundering related topics and bank secrecy when all this happened. And so, like everybody else, we dealt with our reaction to that, and of course, hugging our families and seeing if anybody that we knew was impacted. And what I thought about today that was continues to be interesting is the partnership that started before 9/11, but really ratcheted up after that day in terms of law enforcement and the bankers saying we can do more to work together. And that's still a pretty big theme in 2021. So I thought that was, to me, that was an interesting outcome that still resonates today.
Yeah. Another one that I was thinking about is how the 9/11 events became such a dramatic call to service for so many people. There were a significant uptick in military enlistments. There were a number of people who joined law enforcement at the federal and at other levels. And then lots of people who just generally went into government service, and when interviewed about it, their reason for doing it was 9/11. I think that's a positive in the sense that people saw an opportunity for civic service coming out of a terrible set of events.
Yeah, and what I think it did for our world is, we felt through the late 80s and 90s the importance of, compliance in the anti-money laundering space. But I think after 9/11, we recognized, again, true today as well, that what our community does matters. Today it's anti-trafficking, human trafficking, elder abuse, all sorts of types of financial crime. But I think there was a feeling, hey, whether it's OFAC compliance, dealing with, blacklists at the time, or filing SARs, that what we do matters. And not that it didn't matter before, but to your point about public service, I think some went into our field thinking, I can make a difference. So I think that also was a nice byproduct of, nice, wrong word, but a byproduct of the 9/11 response.
Yeah, I agree. Because oftentimes back in the 80s and early 90s, there was a certain feeling in some compliance corners that people were toiling unnoticed and unappreciated. And I think that certainly has changed.
The other thing that I took away from today's conversation was, the importance also to agencies working together, because that was a big negative against both the intelligence agencies and law enforcement, that there was these silos and what they call the failure of imagination in terms of figuring out what they could do. And while there was some sharing that went on before and partnering within agencies, it wasn't common. So I think there's still some of that today, but it's changed to some degree.
Yeah, the coming out of 9/11, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence was created, and the various intelligence agencies scattered across the federal government, including the Department of Defense, got pulled, at least for nominal reporting purposes, under one head. And the purpose of that was to increase the intelligence sharing, so that we would get the leverage of more eyes on this, on the problem as opposed to fewer. So I think that was a positive. By no means a perfect solution. No time to plant a flag, but definitely a big improvement over pre 9/11.
Yeah, and the other one, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this because we did mention it during the program, and that is the 9/11 Commission. At the time, appointed by the Congress, had 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, large commission staff. We had one of the main staff members, John Roth, on our panel today, and it produced very sharp and compelling recommendations, criticisms, and some support for what went on. And unfortunately, given what went on January 6th, we don't have that same function. We have there are a couple of Republicans on the January 6th Commission, but it's not bipartisan in terms of support. It'll be seen as political regardless of outcome, which is sad. And we need to really know what transpired prior and during January 6th. We got that for 9/11. I hate to say, I don't think we'll get that for January 6th.
Agreed. And not to end on two sort of downers in a row, but I think the other thing 9/11 did is it really brought to a much higher prominence the whole concept of the threat landscape and paying attention to its evolution. And for those, in the financial crime community, crime compliance community, that's all about topologies and trying to, ferret out what you're seeing and what's going on. And after 9/11, I think terrorism was viewed by most Americans as an external threat. But you and I have talked a number of times this year, and we've seen reports and other things that indicate that domestic terrorism is becoming, in many ways, a bigger threat. And I think that threat landscape concept is really something that was around, certainly in the intelligence agencies beforehand, but I don't think bankers, for example, or other financial services experts talked about the threat landscape in the way we all sort of have to think about it and talk about it today.
No, I agree with that. And we'll be sending out, it was live streamed today, but we'll be sending out recordings. So if you get a chance, also myself and Dennis Larmel wrote some blogs about our view about 9/11 and sort of what transpired after. That's also on our website. So if you get a chance to read those, I would urge you to take a look at our site on that and a lot of the other content we've been producing.
Yeah, and John and I are here every week, and you can catch our podcast and our other podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And John, I will talk to you next week.
Take care. Stay safe.
You too. Bye-bye.